There's like a mess on my nightstand table. Ignore that. Welcome back to another video. As you guys saw from the title, we will be talking about all the books that I read in November. Also, surprise, I cut my hair. I was so tired of my long hair and I just didn't have time to keep up with it, so I fully committed to a mom shop and I'm kind of here for it. I kind of want to go shorter, but that would be very risky. So I don't know. I like this length for now. But yeah, November was a very interesting reading month for me. I read a lot of books that were just kind of mid. They weren't terrible, but they weren't amazing. So that's how I feel about the whole month of November. Like, it was pretty mid in terms of reading. I just didn't have a ton of books that I was absolutely obsessed with. I think I only had one 5-star read, which in itself, having a 1-star read is a huge thing. I don't come across many 5-star reads, but for the rest of the month, boy, was it a struggle to get through some of these books. And I actually only read 2 physical books. All the other books that I read in November were actually from Kindle Unlimited. So I have a ton of Kindle Unlimited books that I want to talk about. I was about to say Rex, but I don't know if I would actually recommend them. I guess I would recommend 1 or 2. I'm getting way too ahead of myself. Go grab your cup of coffee. I have mine right here, and let's chat about books. Let's talk about the first 2 books that I actually read physical copies of. The first one being One Italian Summer by Rebecca Sorrell, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. I feel like she's mostly well known for her In 5 Years book. Never read it. This is actually my first book that I read from her, and I have to say I didn't love it. Basically, this book follows a woman named Kate who recently lost her mother, and her mother is her whole entire world. She doesn't really know how to live life without her mom in it. Before her mom died, they actually had planned a trip to Italy. Unfortunately, they never got to go on that trip together, but after her mom passed away, the main character decides to go to Italy regardless to try to see if she can grieve and cope with her mother's death and to see where she wants to take her life now that her mom is no longer part of it. When she lands in Italy, she actually runs into her mom, but the 30-year-old version of her mom. I picked up this book from the library because the synopsis sounded really different from what I normally read. I really was curious to see how the author was going to pull off the main character meeting the 30-year-old version of her mom. So I was actually pretty excited, and a lot of you guys recommended this book to me, and unfortunately the execution was a huge letdown. I understand being close to your mom, completely get it. I also understand there's different stages of grief. Everyone grieves differently, but I just had a major problem with the main character's treatment towards her husband. And there's also a cheating trope in here that I just cannot get behind. I hate the cheating trope. That's like a hard no for me. Whenever it's introduced in a book, it completely ruins the book for me. I did enjoy the whole Italy scenery, the Italy vibes, loved that. The author did a great job at transporting me to Italy. It felt like I was right there with the character, but the character's development was just not there personally for me. So I ended up giving this book a 2 out of 5 stars. I will only recommend this book if you want good summery Italian vibes. Other than that, I probably wouldn't recommend it, unfortunately. The next book that I read was Never Never by Colleen Hoover and Taryn Fisher. This book is about 2 main characters who wake up and suddenly they have no memory of their lives. They can't remember who they are, who their friends or family members are. They can't even remember each other, even though they had been a couple for a number of years. So they end up teaming up and working together to try to figure out who they are, to try to get their memory back. And through the process of them trying to, again, get their memory back, they start to question their relationship and they start to question why they were together in the first place. Again, this is another book that I was really intrigued by the plot. I've never read a book where the 2 main characters couldn't remember each other. So that alone was very intriguing to me. And then the execution completely fell flat, similar to One Italian Summer. I just didn't really like the author's explanation of why they couldn't remember one another, why they had memory loss. And then the epilogue was weird. It kind of threw me in for a loop. I was just like, why? And there were a lot of plot holes. There were things that were mentioned in the beginning of the book, and then by the end, they were never talked about again. And it was just really weird. I'm not a huge fan where books are written by 2 authors. Only exception is Christina Lauren's books, because whenever there's 2 authors, I can tell when one author stops writing and the other starts back up, and it never flows, at least from the books that I've read with 2 authors. So this was definitely not my favorite book. I didn't have anything against the 2 main characters. I actually really liked them, but I just didn't like the writing and the execution execution of the plot. So I ended up giving this book a 2 out of 5 stars, unfortunately. Moving on to the books that I read on Kindle Unlimited. So my 5-star read for the month was Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. It's a dark, very dark romance book. There's like a million trigger warnings with this book. So before you even think about picking it up, definitely look up the trigger warnings ahead of time. There were definitely parts, especially in the beginning, where I had to take little pauses and breaks because it was making my anxiety go through the roof. But I fell in love with the writing, the plot, the execution. The 2 main characters had my absolute heart. It follows 2 characters, Dean and Cora, and it's dual POV, which you guys know I love dual POV. Dean is actually Cora's sister's fiance. They are set to get married. Dean and Cora have never gotten along despite knowing each other for a number of years, but one night while they're out celebrating her sister's birthday, I believe, Cora ends up asking Dean to come pick her up from a bar. When Dean goes to pick her up, they end up getting kidnapped by this man who's a complete psychopath, and this man keeps them kidnapped, chained in his basement. While they're in captivity, they are forced to do some things. I don't want to say what without giving too much away, but obviously they're kidnapped by a psychopath, so bad things happen. They then have to figure out how to survive. Again, very dark, very intense, especially in the first part, but if you can get past the triggering topics, oh my god, this book was beautifully written. The characters had so much character development. By the end of the book, I was almost in tears because I was rooting for the characters and I was obsessed with them. I was obsessed with Dean. My whole heart. Such a beautifully written book that will tug at your heart and will probably make you cry a couple times because it's just that type of book. Yeah, that's all I have for that. A very beautiful book that I highly recommend if you can get past the dark elements in it. I can't remember if I read this book at the beginning of November or if I read it at the end of October, but I did read Until You by Katharina Maura, and this is the first book in the Off Limits series. I read her Windsor Brothers series last month, absolutely loved that series, so I decided to check out this one. This specific book follows 2 characters. Again, it is dual POV, love it. It follows Arya and Grayson. So Arya is Grayson's best friend's little sister. She's always been off limits. Arya actually catches her boyfriend cheating on her and is left with no choice but to ask Grayson for help and for a job. He's basically a billionaire and has his own company, so obviously being his best friend's little sister, he agrees. She moves cross country to California with him and starts working for him. They both have a lot of trauma that they have to overcome. They haven't had easy childhoods by any means. Arya's parents were murdered and Grayson was left out of church when he was a baby. Throughout the book, they're both coping with their past and their childhoods. I loved Grayson so much. I loved Arya, loved their character development. It was kind of like a slow burn, but in a good way. And I'm not really a fan of slow burns, but if you're looking for a good little romance book that's just going to have you smiling, definitely pick this one up. Like I said, it's on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Kindle Unlimited, go download it. I would say look up the trigger warnings, but I ended up giving this book a 4.75. Loved it so much. I've become a big fan of Katharina's writing. I can't wait to read the rest of her book. The next book that I read actually had me confused the entire time I was reading it, and till this day, I don't really know if I actually liked it. And that book is Play Along by T.L. Swan. This one is about a woman who gets kidnapped by a man and she ends up falling for him. That's the gist of the book in the most vague way I can talk about this book. She ends up falling for him even though she shouldn't. When I downloaded this book, I thought it was going to be a enemies to lover dark romance type thing, but it really wasn't that. It was enemies to lover for maybe 5 seconds and then the main character completely forgot that she was kidnapped. The writing wasn't the most amazing thing ever, but it was so crazy and the author kept throwing loops in there, kept throwing twists just for the heck of it. It felt like I was watching a cheesy action movie that I couldn't look away from. I wanted to stop reading, but at the same time I couldn't stop reading because I wanted to find out what the ending was going to be and what was going to happen to these characters. But holy crap, these characters pissed me off, especially the female character. She pissed me off so many times. She was so impulsive. I didn't really buy the chemistry or the romance between the two characters and I was skimming through the spicy scenes. But yeah, it was like a train wreck. That's how I felt reading this book. I think I ended up giving it a 3.5, maybe leaning towards a 3 actually. I probably won't read anything else from this author, but yeah, if you're looking for an entertaining read that's just going to throw you in for a loop and it's just going to be outlandish and it's going to be like all over the place, and I recommend this one. The next book that I read was 'Tis the Season for Revenge by Morgan Elizabeth. This is the first book in the Season of Revenge series, another dual POV book. I read a lot of those this month, I just realized. This one follows two main characters, Abby and Damien. Abby gets dumped by a very shitty boyfriend on Halloween, and to get revenge on him, she sets out to date his boss that he absolutely hates. The plot had me intrigued by that alone because I just knew it was going to be a funny book where the main character was going to go all out to get revenge on her ex, and that's exactly what Abby did. She is the pettiest character I've ever read in my entire life, and I'm absolutely here for it. I loved her character. I loved how petty she was because her shitty ex-boyfriend deserved everything. And it's actually a pretty short book. I definitely recommend if you want to go laugh. I didn't really love the spicy scenes, but that's just my personal opinion. I don't really like spicy scenes in books. I honestly find them cringy most times, but overall I really enjoyed this book, and it was a cute little romantic comedy. It also takes place between Halloween and Christmas, so you get like the seasonal vibes, which is really nice. And I just love the writing, love the execution, love the main characters and the side characters as well, and I'm so excited to continue the series. Again, definitely recommend if you want a cute little revenge rom-com. It felt like I was watching a movie, and yeah, it was so fun. And then I started another series that I probably won't continue, and that book was Winter's Mourn, which is the Winter's Black FBI mystery series by Mary Stone. This one follows a FBI agent, a rookie FBI agent, who just got assigned her first murder case. What made me download this book was that the main character's background was very interesting. Her parents actually got murdered when she was a teenager, and her little brother was abducted by the serial killer, never to be seen or found again. And on her first case as a FBI agent, the person who killed her parents and abducted her brother actually makes contact with her. And at the beginning, as the reader, you're trying to figure out if the case that she's currently working on and the case of her parents is related, which is one of the reasons why I downloaded this book in the first place. But the execution for me just wasn't there. It started off really good. I was obsessed, I was addicted, I couldn't stop reading, and then halfway through the book it just got really dull and repetitive. It also ended very open-ended, and I prefer my thrillers to have a closed ending. I know it's part of a series and I get that, but I was actually reading the synopsis of the other books and the reviews, and it seems like you don't really get closure on her parents' case until the very last book. And I'm not going to read a 10-book series or however many books this series had just to figure that out. I ended up giving this book a 2 out of 5 stars, and like I said, I'm not going to continue the series. And then I read King of Wrath by Anna Huang, and I was actually pretty impressed with this book. It's the first book in the Kings of Sin series by Anna Huang. I think I enjoyed this book a lot more than I enjoyed Twisted by her. This one is actually a arranged marriage. It follows two characters, Dante and Vivian. Both characters are stuck in this arranged marriage situation. At the beginning, neither of them want to be married to one another, but they have no choice. Dante is actually looking to get revenge on Vivian's family, so he kind of views her as a chess piece. He doesn't really care about her or her family. I don't know why, but I've been loving arranged marriages. Maybe it's the enemies to lovers situation that goes on, but I've just been here for it, and I feel like the writing in this book was so much better than her Twisted series. I didn't love the spicy scenes, but again, that's just my personal opinion. I kind of just skimmed through them. I will say towards the end, it did get a tad boring. For that reason, I'm only giving it a 3.5. Until the very last couple chapters, I was hooked. I was there. I was going to give it 4 stars, and then it got very repetitive and slow that I was just like, okay, you lost me. So I ended up just giving it a 3.5, but I highly recommend, and I'm so excited to check out her other books in the series. Then I do want to mention a book that I DNF'd. I DNF'd Ruthless Rival by L.J. Shen. I already forgot what this book is about, but I know that I DNF'd it. It's a enemies to lovers romance, and it follows a male main character who is obsessed with getting revenge on a family that his mom used to work for when he was younger. He fell in love with that family's daughter and they were forced apart, but he's always resented her and her family for what they did to him. So he makes it his life mission to get revenge, and finally the opportunity comes. The reason I DNF'd this book was because, again, it was enemies to lovers for 5 seconds and then it just jumped straight to a lust relationship, and I just wasn't feeling it. I was expecting for the male main character to actually get revenge and make it his whole personality and have like a slow burn transition into the romance, but it wasn't that. It was obvious from the get-go that the male main character was still in love with the female main character, and I just wasn't really obsessed with the writing, so I ended up DNFing it, unfortunately. I hate DNFing books, but I was just not going to sit through that one. And then the last book that I read was one that I actually just finished this morning, and that was Dante, a Dark Mafia book by Sadie Kincaid. This is actually my first official mafia romance book. I don't think I've ever read a mafia romance before, and I'm hooked, you guys. I loved every second of this book. It was so addicting. I didn't want to put it down. I kept turning the page because I just wanted to keep on reading. I will say that it is enemies to lovers, again, for like 5 seconds, but despite that, I still ate this book up. I was obsessed with this main character, Dante. The female main character was also very feisty and sassy. Loved her. So it basically follows a mafia leader, Dante, who takes the female main character, Kat, as a prisoner because her brother owns the mafia a shit ton of money, so he takes her as payment. But it's clear from the very beginning that he's not actually going to do anything to her. He's not going to harm her, and he's immensely attracted to her from literally the very beginning. That's why I say it's enemies to lovers for like 5 seconds, but they were so enjoyable and their banter and the dialogue was so funny that I didn't mind that it wasn't truly enemies to lovers, and I just really loved them together. Love the character development. This is actually the first book in a mafia romance series, and I'm actually going to read the next 2 books in the series. I think it's 2 books or 3 books in the series, but I'm going to read them in the month of December, and I'm very excited because I just love the main characters, love the side characters, love the writing. It's so crazy how you can read about a mafia romance and you can casually read about a male character murdering someone, but you know that in real life that wouldn't fly and you would not be with someone like that, and you still eat the book up. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. There you have it. Those are all the books that I read in the month of November. Like I said at the beginning, it was a very mid reading month. I didn't love all the books that I read, but there were some hits in the pile. I guess I can't say that it was a horrible reading month because I did get a 5-star and a 4.75 read from the books that I read. I don't know, it just still feels mid for some reason. Let me know in the comments below how your reading month went. What books did you read in November? Did you have a great reading month, a bad reading month? I would love to know all of that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed watching it. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.